It made me cry.
This one's wife. Stop holding hands. I want to hold your hand, sang the Beatles in the 60s, and it would appear that this one's wife must have that on an eternal loop in her head as a consequence of the number of occasions she has to grab Prince Harry's hand. This has been picked up on by numerous people, usually commenting along the lines of, they behave like a pair of lovelorn teenagers, but for a couple that have been in a relationship for the length of time that they have, it looks rather clingy and pathetic. Of course, some of their supporters will claim they're so in love, it's so wonderful to see. But do they actually understand the reason why this hand-holding takes place? Well, Judith Woods decides to vent her spleen in the Telegraph, so let's find out what she has to say with a healthy dose of challenge fuel from this one's wife, and we'll also ascertain whether she's correct as to what is underlying this behaviour. Sorry, Harry and this one's wife, the title reads, but your performative hand-holding fools no one. Right, that's it. Does anyone have a pair of bolt cutters? Or maybe a water cannon? Because frankly, I think that's the only way we can stop Harry and this one's wife from holding hands. Like so many other things about them, it is fingernails down the blackboard grating, annoying, and so goddamn performative. The whole young and so very much in love, not like frosty and uptight William and Kate routine has worn thinner than cigarette paper. Harry is 39. This one's wife is 42. They have 2 offspring, aged 4 and 2. Nobody has free hands at that age and stage. They're either full of squirming children or they're ridiculously bulky paraphernalia. Well, pausing there are 2 important distinctions to make there. First of all, how often are they actually with the children? Therefore, you're not going to have your hands full of squirming children. And secondly, they have people around them to carry the bulky stuff. She continues by writing, any free hand is for patting down your partner's body to find the car keys. Fact. Every time I see those 2 holding hands, it triggers me, confesses a colleague who also has a brace of little ones. It's inauthentic. It's unbelievable. It makes me want to scream because it bears no resemblance to the realities of parenthood. Or, indeed, the realities of work. Whether pitching up to launch the Invictus Games, parting ways with Spotify, or hitting the ski slopes of Vancouver, these 2 want it let it to be known, via the medium of interlocking fingers, that they are inseparable. Press conferences, UN speeches, no opportunity is too formal not to hang on to one another like a couple of prom night teens. We know this one's wife is, whisper it, a hugger, as well as being one of the most influential women in the world, according to the couple's new website, which means it must be true. Doesn't she grasp that clinging onto her husband's arms all the time isn't feminist? Quite the opposite. It projects a bizarre image of childishness and codependence. Now, that's interesting that that is the interpretation that this author has placed upon this behaviour. And of course, it does often make her look reliant upon Harry in terms of always grabbing at him, pawing him, looking for his hand. And this image of childishness and codependence, of course, is a collateral consequence of what's really going on. But more of that in a moment. The irony is that Harry, formerly known as Prince, is a man who knows exactly what to do with empty hands. He was born into it. It was bred into him. It's pretty much the USP of Windsor Man 1.0. Slip one hand into the jacket pocket, occasionally open a button, close the button, hands behind the back, pause and repeat. While we're on the subject, he has added a troubling new move to his repertoire. He has a tendency to place his hand over his solar plexus. It is an unconscious habit, and presumably stems from a desire to shield himself from the media's enemy fire. Crikey. As for this one's wife, she can stretch out her arms to heal the world, or maybe write meaningful slogans on bananas, as she did for sex workers at a Bristol charity. To be honest, the only time I did not feel irritated by their relentless PDA was when other people criticised them for holding hands while leaving the funeral procession for the late Queen at Westminster Hall. I'd say for once it was an appropriate response to a highly emotional occasion. It's not the gesture per se that irks, but rather the context. Whenever I walk down the street holding hands with my husband, I like to think of it as a signal to the neighbours that there'll be no shouting or door slamming because we are quite evidently loved up. Today, at any rate. Would we hold hands more often if we were a global brand seeking to shape the future through business and philanthropy, like this one's wife and Harry? Dear Lord, I hope not. They are committed to their mission. Show up, do good, says their website. They hold the value that charitable work should not simply be a handout, but rather a hand held. A fine sentiment, but it's tricky to reach out to others when they won't or can't stop clutching one another. Accordingly, Judith Woods is particularly irked by the repeated hand-holding that we see the Gruesome Twosome engaging in, and she's not the only one. But why does it happen? Well, seasoned viewers of my work will know that because this one's wife is a narcissist, she has to control all of those around her. Anybody that comes up on her radar, her subconscious narcissism, like a background app, is essentially scanning everybody to ensure, are they under control? If so, keep them that way. If they're not, get them under control through one of the three assertions of control. Harry, as the intimate partner primary source, is the main provider of fuel, character traits and residual benefits. That remains the case even when he's in sustained devaluation, although at the moment he's having a respite period, as I explained in a video yesterday. This means that he is the most important appliance in her fuel matrix that needs to be controlled, and therefore one of the rudimentary methods by which she controls him is simply doing so physically. You might have seen a video yesterday where they were out and about, and you can see her touching him on the back, as she often does, to prod him into place, pulling on his arm. It does look like she's behaving like a toddler who's wanting attention, and in effect, that's what it is. She's wanting to ensure that he's there, not because there's a codependency from her, but because she has to control him, because she subconsciously needs to know that he's under control. And that necessity of knowledge is there all the time that he's on her radar. Thus, in order to maintain that control over him, she takes his hand, reaches for his hand, and therefore, through a physical assertion of control, controls him. The fact also that he takes her hand not only demonstrates that he is under control, but it provides her fuel, because it's a kind gesture on his part. He has become so conditioned to this that he also instinctively accepts her hand, or in some instances reaches for it himself, demonstrating nice and easily for her just how much under control he is. It does look ridiculous because it's unnatural. And it's unnatural because it doesn't come, at least from her, from a place of emotional empathy. It comes from two things: the necessity of control over Harry and the necessity of control over those watching. Namely, look at us, we're a couple in love. The fact is, a healthy couple wouldn't give a rat's ass about what other people think about their relationship, because it's their relationship. But everything's a performance when it comes to the narcissist, and this is certainly the case when it's this one's wife. The world needs to know what an idyllic marriage that they have, and therefore she has to keep telling everybody this. Naturally, many people see through this. If you have to keep telling us, that tends to suggest that it's not. People are not stupid. This one's wife, of course, thinks that people are. She thinks that this repeated show of holding hands, telling the world that they are in love, is something that people accept and swallow. Many people do not. It is artificial. It is inauthentic. It is manufactured by her narcissism as a means of controlling Harry and, through facade management, controlling the outside world. Harry, hold my hand. Good. You're under control. World, see that we're holding our hands. Now you're all under control. And that's simply why it's done. As an unaware narcissist, she doesn't realise this. She thinks that she cares about and loves Harry, but she's simply leading him around, like the ginger poodle that he is, asserting her control over him, as she does each and every time that Ginger Bollocks comes up on the radar. That is why the hand-holding goes on so often, and also because her facade is almost this sort of sickly sweet, aren't I wonderful? Witness the holding the hand up to the mouth, the tee-hee giggles, the looking over the shoulder, you'll recall when she was dressed up as overripe burst tomato woman and she said, "I'm proud of everything he does." It's all a bit too much. And therefore, because her narcissism has selected sickly sweet exterior facade, hand-holding is part of that. Other narcissists wouldn't necessarily do it, but she, as a mid-range narcissist, goes down that particular avenue. It looks ridiculous. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, there are some who'll think it's sweet, but they're still watching Peppa Pig at the age of 25. But as for anybody else, they look on it and say, it looks ridiculous. Here and there, perhaps you might do it, and possibly more in private when you've gone for a walk by the edge of the river away from prying eyes, but that doesn't matter to this one's wife. She needs everybody to see that they're so in love and holding hands. It is indeed purely performative and is done for the pursuit of the prime aims. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.